Well, I'd like to know in the process if the record that the producer's making is for audiophile consumption or whether it is for consumer, memento, buy at the merch table kind of
Yes.
thing. If there's a way for them to answer that question early on, that helps us decide where to spend the money and how to spend our time. Because if it's a memento, then deciding to take off a song or go switching to a double instead of a single album has a lot less meaning because it's about having the physical product. It's going to sound good. It's just, are we really going for 45 RPM short sides with all high fidelity? Is that really what the consumer wants? Are they willing to pay extra for it? And stuff like that. So if I can find that out, that helps.
Yeah.
For many styles of music, I really think there's one ideal mastering that works as a stepping off point for both formats. Usually, I started this before digital, so my brain still has this sort of model of a good sounding master that's not loud. What do we need to name? Maybe, all of the Steely Dan catalog or Dire Straits, Money for Nothing or Brothers in Arms record or 10 Summoners Tales. These were records that were made at Masterdisk when I was around.
Yeah.
And had some relevance to my opinion of things. Or Genesis or Phil Collins solo record or whatever. I'm getting off track, but the point being that good was completely disconnected from loud in that sense. So it needed to sound good. There was tone, balance, there were dynamics, and you can still master for that target, and then decide, does the digital need to be limited more and compressed more, and if so, does that mean we have to change the EQ a little bit? And then, but we're working from then the vinyl master that could also be your HD master if you wanted to have a open and wide dynamic range HD master. So
yeah,
more often than not, and it's a function of who my clients are, which tend to be a little bit on the alternative and singer-songwriter and the experimental and jazz sides of things are typically not as concerned about it being screaming loud. That certainly doesn't mean I make screaming loud records. But by and large, most of them that are going to vinyl that use my services are looking for an audiophile type experience. So we're working from it from that perspective. But the reason why I asked that question up front is we could spend days talking about whether or not 24 minutes is on a side is adequate or whether it needs to be 18 or whatever. But if it's a record that may not even be taken out of the shrink wrap, then it's really, I don't want to, honestly, don't want to waste their time and money on something like that, on decisions like that. If it's going to be reviewed, if it's going to be given to an influencer, to listen to or to review or to talk about, then of course we want to dot every I and cross every T. I personally usually work from the vinyl side of things first. It's very hard to, once you've given a client a compressed and loud version of something, for them to accept one that's softer, that has a lower average level, has more transients, actually has more snap and more hi-fi sound, but is soft, doesn't go to 11, like the Spinal Tap. It's softer. It's one of the quickest ways to get fired as a mastering engineer is to send them back something that's softer than what they thought the original was.
Of course.
It doesn't matter whether it's better or not. If it's softer, you're for that reason, I'm out, The trick though is including the client in the approval process for vinyl from a digital reference. So it's tricky. I honestly, the people they do have to just sort of trust that I've got the helm. I know where the boat's supposed to go, and I'm going to point it in the right direction. Some people that want to micromanage that part of the process that aren't vinyl collectors themselves, might not really even know why we're going, through this other channel, or why we're taking the weird route to get to where we need to go. One thing I want to say for public consumption, though, is many master engineers that don't have cutting experience, in my experience, will overprocess for vinyl. Because they're like, well, we know vinyl's got this problem with out of phase bass, so we better mono the bass. And we know vinyl's got this problem with high frequency distortion, so we better make sure we hit that de-esser extra hard. And there are times on the record, I want everyone to hear me, there are times when you do not need to mono the bass and when you do not need to worry about high frequency distortion. And the very simplest case is on a long slide. On a long slide, the level's going to have to be lower, and in which case the groove geometry will be just fine. The lower level means we don't have to worry about high frequency saturation and distortion. And the phase undulations in the bottom end may prove out to be absolutely fine. Or we may only have to do a little bit of processing right where that floor tom roll is, because that's what's causing the groove to go crazy. But when you send off a master to a factory style mastering and cutting operation, they're going to put the filters in just because it's the easy way to do it, the fast way to do it. They're being paid to cut as many sides a day as they can, not cut the most perfect sides that they can.
And there's like a crazy backlog also, right, on the factory side of things. Right?
There's almost everyone's working beyond their capability. They're just churning out as many things as they can. Not to say that all, and I've actually got called on this on occasion, because some of the guys who cut for factory institutions are actually quite good, but quite often they're not compensated to spend the extra time that needed to really get it right. Yeah. Case in point, if I didn't master the record, so you send me something that's been mastered by somebody else, even if they're good, I've got to listen all the way through the record to find out what cutting issues I might have, and to determine what the best amplitude, how loud to cut it so that it fits and doesn't distort and doesn't skip. So, those are all three characteristics that have to go in together.
Wow.
If I was not paid by the hour, I would pick a lower level, and the thing would be cut, and it would be simple. It wouldn't skip, it wouldn't distort, but it would be kind of boring. And so this last 10% that we add by spending this extra work really has the potential, anyway, of taking a record that's kind of meh on vinyl and having it really jump out of the speakers, like the records that we grew up loving and idolizing. So if you're a consumer of vinyl listening to this and you've kind of noticed that records sometimes sound kind of meh, that's one of the reasons that either they weren't mixed specifically enough for vinyl, and somebody took like the digital master and just manhandled it to make it work. And I could go more into what I mean by that, but if you hyper compress something and really boost the top end a lot, to get that to work on vinyl, you've got to do quite a bit of derogatory, filtering and cutting,
sure.
And you really have to bring the level down to the point where you've lost all the benefit of that gain.
Right.
And for the technical, for people that can kind of follow along with this, if you've crushed all the dynamics out of the record and pushed it up to the ceiling to make the CD or make the digital file sound great, I'm going to have to lower that whole thing back down so that it fits on a record. And now all of your transients, all your sparkle is gone.
Yes.
And that's really what makes the record kind of sound boring and flat to me. Right. Is it's lost that attack, that sparkle. Right. Otherwise, how could we go back to a record that's 20 years old and have it sound, have it jump out of the speakers and sound amazing? So I like to tell people that a production style and a mix style and a mastering style that was good in 1975 or 79 or whatever, that works really great on vinyl, and it almost cuts itself.
That makes sense.
They were made together, and if you include analog tape in that as part of your intention, then it's almost even better. Because the analog tape has kind of smoothed off some of the transients and some of the harshness, but also still giving you the drive and the intention. But the some of what is written about how to prepare mixes for vinyl is a little misleading and a little too easy, and unfortunately causes people to do damage to their mixes when they really don't need to. By pre-processing in ways. Well, for instance, if we have a DS, if we have an S problem on a side, it's usually not on the first, second, or third song. It's the last song on the side, because that's where distortion problems are magnified. And it doesn't mean we got to roll all the top end off. Certainly don't have to roll the top end off on the other three songs. We just have to hit the S's a little harder on that last song. And so we've got a purpose-built de-esser for that, but we'll also go in and surgically EQ some of those S's. And while that does take a little of the eth out of the program, the alternative is I can keep the level hot and I don't have splattery distortion. That's kind of a pain. But even at that, it's a production decision that I have to share with who's making the record.
Yeah.
One client of mine absolutely wants their records as hot as I can possibly make them, and have them not skip and distort. So I know that their criteria, they want their records to. They sell a lot of their 7-inch and their 10-inch to DJs, and they of all it's not exactly pop, but it's they want it to be dynamic. They want it to jump out of the speakers. And so I know that criteria. Another client in a similar type of format, but really want a hi-fi experience. They want the person that had bought a really good turntable and has spent money on their listening system. They want them to not hear any distortion, would be crystal clear, nice, and be accurate to the original master, like not be changed.
Yeah. Wait, so do you have an